Somewhere in the world right now, a signal is moving. Not a broadcast. Not a transmission error. A deliberate encrypted pulse jumping between continents every 96 minutes, leaving no trace, no origin point and no explanation. Intelligence agencies first detected it in 2019. They called it black signal. For 3 years, AI, the most sophisticated surveillance infrastructure ever built, 17 satellites, 4 listening stations, and a joint task force spanning 9 countries, tracked it without a single breakthrough. Every time analysts locked coordinate, the signal vanished. Every time they got close, it was already somewhere else. This is not a story about a signal they couldn't find. This is a story about what happened when they finally did. The team assembled for Operation Black Signal was not conventional. These were not field agents running standard protocol. They were signals intelligence specialists, cryptographic analysts, and covert operations officers pulled from active assignments across 3 continents. No shared briefing rooms. No joint communications. Each member received their orders through a separate, isolated channel. The operation was designed so that no single person held the complete picture. That design, as it turned out, was the first mistake. In the spring of 2022, the signal stopped moving. For 11 hours and 43 minutes, it held a fixed position. A remote desert region, coordinates classified, infrastructure sparse, population 0. Analysts at the command center watched the feed in near silence. 11 hours was not a glitch. 11 hours was an invitation. The deployment order came within the hour. 4 vehicles. No air support. Minimum communications. The team moved under satellite blackout, navigating by pre-loaded terrain maps, cutting through open desert in the early hours before dawn. Thermicane imaging showed no human presence within 40 kilometers. Whatever was out there, it was waiting without a heartbeat. What they found at the coordinates defied the initial intelligence assessment. Not a field camp. Not a mobile relay unit. A facility. Partially buried, structurally reinforced, with power systems that were still running on an independent grid. The kind of construction that takes years. The kind of construction that requires planning, resources, and access to classified engineering specifications that should not exist outside of government programs. The doors were open. That detail alone stopped the team lead for 60 seconds. In every covert operation, a locked door means resistance. An open door means something worse. It means whoever was here knew you were coming. And they left on their own terms. Inside, the equipment was still warm. Servers, transmission arrays, and a central decryption console that had clearly been active within the last several hours. Hard drives had been wiped, but not destroyed. Cables were disconnected, but not cut. And on every surface a thin layer of dust. Except for the places where someone had recently been standing. The team swept the facility in under 12 minutes. No personnel, no weapons, no documents. Just one thing left behind. A single active terminal. Screen on. Cursor blinking. And a message that the signals team would spend the next 18 months trying to contextualize, verify, and ultimately fail to explain. The operation had been running for 3 years. The best intelligence infrastructure in the world had been watching, tracking, and closing in. And someone already knew every step. The signal didn't just move. It adapted. Every time a new intercept position was established, black signal would shift, not randomly, but with a precision that suggested it was responding to the tracking itself. Analysts at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency ran the displacement patterns through 3 separate modeling systems. All 3 returned the same conclusion. The signal was anticipating pursuit, not evading it, anticipating it. That distinction matters more than it sounds. Evasion is reactive. What black signal was doing was something closer to choreography. It was moving on a schedule that accounted for satellite repositioning windows, for the 6-minute lag in relay handoffs between listening stations, for the exact processing delay inside the intercept pipeline. Whoever designed this system knew the infrastructure being used to hunt it. Not in general terms, in precise operational detail. The decision was made to deploy a ground team. Task Force Meridian was assembled from elements of the Defense Intelligence Agency, GEVICHEN, a classified signals unit operating under a designation that still cannot be reported, and 2 contractors whose affiliations remain sealed under a 2019 executive order. They were given 48 hours of preparation and a single operational directive. Reach the last confirmed transmission point before the signal moved again. That point was a desert facility in a region where 3 national jurisdictions overlap and none of them officially acknowledge each other's presence. The coordinates placed the team inside a dead zone. No commercial satellite coverage, no cellular infrastructure, no recorded human activity for 11 years. On paper, the location didn't exist as anything worth watching. That was, of course, exactly the point. The team arrived at 0340 local time. What they found was not what any model had predicted. The facility was not abandoned in the way that word usually implies. It was staged. Equipment had been powered down in sequence, not all at once. Workstations showed organized shutdown procedures. Chairs were pushed in. Cables were coiled and labeled. Someone had left this place the way you leave an office at the end of a normal working day. Deliberately, without urgency. Kie? GEVICHEN. As if they had known for some time that today would be the last day. The transmitter was still warm. Thermal imaging confirmed residual heat consistent with active operation within the previous 90 minutes. Vicent. The team had missed the window by less than 2 hours. 93 minutes, according to the final field report, but the transmitter had not simply been switched off. It had completed a transmission cycle. A full one, whatever it was built to send, it had finished sending it. And then the coded messages began to surface. Embedded in the facility's local server cache? A cache that should have been wiped, GEVICHEN. That appeared to have been wiped but had been reconstructed by the team's forensic specialist using a recovery protocol developed for exactly this kind of deliberate erasure? Were fragments. Partial strings, sequences that, when assembled, formed something coherent. Something that was not a technical readout or a logistics file. It was a message written in plain language. Addressed to no one. Addressed, in a sense, to everyone who would eventually be standing in that room. The team's communications officer read it aloud over the secure channel back to command. The room at Fort Meade went completely silent. 4 words, that was all it said. You are late. And beneath that, a second line. Operation was never secret. GEVICHEN. The senior analyst at Fort Meade later described the moment as the floor disappearing beneath her feet. Because those words were not a taunt. They were a proof of concept. Whoever built Black Signal had anticipated every step of the response. The deployment timeline. The satellite rerouting. The covert insertion into Grid Sector 9. All of it had been modeled, predicted, and accounted for, before a single boot hit that desert floor. The question was no longer what Black Signal was transmitting. The question was how long it had been watching. Forensic signals analysts began tearing apart the transmission history going back 14 months. What they found restructured the entire investigation. The signal had not been moving randomly. Moving in response. It had been moving in response. Every time a tracking node locked onto a frequency, Black Signal shifted. Not after detection, but before it. Milliseconds before. That is not evasion. That is anticipation. The system was not running from surveillance. It was demonstrating awareness of it. Inside the abandoned facility, the team recovered hardware that should not have existed outside of 3 classified laboratories in the world. Modular transmission arrays, self-cooling processor banks designed for sustained high altitude or deep desert operation, and a power source that drew nothing from any known grid. Independent, buried, designed to outlast the people who built it. What made this worse? What made the silence in that command room so absolute? Was the realization that the facility had not been abandoned in a hurry. There were no signs of rush departure. No overturned equipment. No burned files. Everything had been left in deliberate order. As if the operators knew they were finished because their objective was already complete. Not interrupted. Complete. Intelligence historians would later compare this moment to the discovery of the Venona intercepts. That cold, retrospective vertigo of understanding that a penetration had been running far longer and far deeper than anyone had imagined. Except Venona took years to decode. Black signal announced itself. It wanted to be understood. That distinction matters enormously. Because a system designed to hide does not leave a message. A system designed to communicate does. Black signal was never purely an intelligence gathering operation. It was, at least in part, a demonstration. A controlled reveal. Gevichen. Someone had built an apparatus capable of ghosting the most sophisticated tracking infrastructure on the planet, and then deliberately chosen, to let it be found. On their terms. At their timing. The team on the ground was not a discovery unit. They had been made into an audience. Back at Fort Meade, the senior analyst pulled up the full transmission log and ran a new query. Not for origin points. Not for frequency patterns. But for something no one had thought to search for before. Recipient signatures. Embedded metadata. Suggesting the signal had been directed at specific nodes within the very networks tracking it. The results came back in under 40 seconds. 31 confirmed hits. 31 moments where black signal had not just evaded detection infrastructure. It had transmitted directly through it, using it as a relay. Using the watchers as the wire. That changes everything. This was not a signal running from surveillance. This was a signal running on surveillance. Every satellite uplink, every secure relay tower, every classified monitoring node that had been hunting black signal. It had been feeding through them. The entire global intelligence architecture turned into an antenna. The team pulled the final decoded packet at 0347 local time. 2 lines, no header, no signature. No encryption key required, because by that point no encryption was necessary. You are late. Operation was never secret. 4 words. Then 4 more, and in those 8 words, every assumption the operation had been built on collapsed. They had believed they were hunting something hidden, something afraid, something that needed to stay invisible to survive. But a signal that roots itself through the systems designed to catch it is not hiding. It is demonstrating, it is showing you. Silivs to Viche, with clinical precision, exactly how exposed you are. Not to warn you, to prove a point. The facility was abandoned, yes. But it was not empty. The transmitter had been left deliberately. The coded messages had been left deliberately, Vish. Even the partial decryption trails, the breadcrumbs that led the team there in the first place, had been left deliberately. This was not a crime scene. It was a classroom. Someone, or some organization, had built an operation sophisticated enough to ghost across 6 continents, penetrate 31 classified relay nodes, and vanish before the world's most advanced intelligence apparatus could close the distance. And then, instead of disappearing completely, they sent a message. Not to governments. Not to agencies, to the people in the room. Gevichen. To the ones still holding the equipment, still staring at the screen, still trying to understand what they were looking at. The debrief lasted 11 hours. No conclusions were formally published. No attribution was made. Officially, the operation remains open. Unofficially, the people who were there will tell you the same thing when pressed. That the most unsettling part was never the signal itself. It was the silence after it stopped. The realization that something that capable had chosen to be found, chosen to speak, and then chosen to go quiet. On its own terms. On its own timeline. Intelligence work is built on the belief that information is power, that knowing more than your adversary is the decisive advantage. Black signal did not challenge that belief. It inverted it. It knew more. It always had. And it waited until the right moment to let you know that it knew. What you take from that depends on who you are. If you work in signals intelligence, It is a technical problem, with no current solution. With no current solution. If you study geopolitics, it is a warning about the fragility of infrastructure assumed to be secure. And if you are simply paying attention, it features a reminder that the most dangerous operations are not the ones that stay hidden. They are the ones that reveal themselves only after they are already finished. The signal is gone. Gevichen. The transmitter is in a classified storage facility. The desert is quiet. But the question it left behind has no clean answer. And that, more than anything else, is exactly what it intended.